Welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to take a look at the defining thing of Megatraveller, the Rebellion. This is the Rebellion Sourcebook. This came out in 1988 and gave us all the nuts and bolts of what was going on in the Shattered Imperium. I'm going to go through this book pretty much page by page, and we're going to discuss some of the various factions that were fighting for the Iridium throne at this time. So today on page 121, Rebellion. Rebellion Sourcebook for Megatraveller by Mark Miller. This was published in 1988. There's the nice back of the cover. Love the 80s artwork. I love the artwork in all these books. This gave us our first real in-depth look at the actual rebellion. We knew the emperor had been slain, and we knew that there were various factions vying for the throne. This went much more into depth on those topics. Inside the front cover, as you can see, spine is detaching. I read the heck out of this thing. I still do. It's funny, I hadn't read it in about a year and a half or 2 years, so going through it again reminded me what I liked about this book, and I'm going to go into those details. But here are the factions of the rebellion as of 1120. This book takes us through the 1116 assassination of Strephon by Dolinar and takes us up into 1120. This shows the faction in the middle there. There's their home hub. I always thought this looked like Mickey Mouse, by the way. And then it shows their area of influence. So the areas in white are the immediate influence, and anything gray is an area they patrol but don't necessarily control, or patrol but don't necessarily control. So we take a look at the design is Mark Miller with additional design by a lot of the usual suspects. Jefferson Schweikhofer gets a mention in this one. He of lots of traveler-based fiction and a series of traveler kind of novels. I may take a look at those sometime down the line. Coming into Rebellion Sourcebook, they're just talking about the rebellion itself and the effects. So, first we get the assassination. This is a much more detailed look at the assassination of Strephon by Dolinar than we got before. We find out the steps that Dolinar took. It wasn't just a simple matter of him pointing a gun and shooting the emperor, his wife, his daughter, and by accident an Aslan noble. It was design. He didn't care about the Aslan, that was an accident, but the other three were designed that he would take them out, claim the throne, and at the same time be surrounded by his own guard. This section talks a great deal about the Imperial Guard and the way they rotated among the seven. To show political unity, they rotate the Guard among each of the 7 domains of the Imperium. They serve a 1-month tour of duty. By coincidence, when Dolinar pulled his assassination, the Eilish Guard was the one there, and Dolinar made certain that the people that were actually there in the Guard were completely loyal to him. His idea was that he would assassinate the emperor, declare himself emperor by right of assassination, take the throne, and then his guard would take control of the palace, and by the time anybody thought to do anything about it, his coup would be a fact. Unfortunately, it didn't really work that way for him. He was not accepted. There was a firefight in the palace. Some of the troops had tried to give dummy loads to other members of the guard that weren't loyal to Dolinar, but that plot had gotten found out, so it ended up in a big firefight, and Dolinar had to flee capital and head back to Eilish to try to stay alive and consolidate his hold. So then we go to the Emperor's nephews. These guys would have been behind the princess for the throne. After these guys would have been 4th and 5th in line for the throne, and they were Varian and Lucan. And we all know who Lucan became. He became emperor, but here it talks about how Lucan may have become emperor. His brother Varian was older, and an assassin was sent to kill both brothers, but Varian's version of the story, he snatches up a gun and tries to defend his brother, but always unsuccessful, and everyone in the room is killed but him. In another version, which is told by a Lieutenant Windhook, who was in the room at the time, Lucan is the one that killed everyone in the room. An assassin did in fact come there, was stopped by the guard on duty, and that as Lucan saw what the assassin was there to kill both of them, and then saw what had happened on the palace monitors as far as Strephon's death, Lucan took the opportunity, killed his older brother and any other witnesses, except a Lieutenant Windhoek, who was there for a routine task for the twins, and saw what happened in the room and fled. I've not really seen a follow-up to Windhoek's story. I did some research online trying to find out if anybody did it, and I found a couple of homebrews, but I don't think GDW ever did a follow-up to what became of him. And if anybody knows any different, please let me know. I'd be very interested. So Windhoek says Lucan killed everyone so he could seize the throne for himself. In fact, he does seize the throne for himself. The next bit of the story goes through the actual rebellion year by year, up through 1120, as we start to grind down. This fleshed out a lot of stuff. This is the one clear choice, why each faction would choose who they chose. Pretty interesting reading. You read a lot about capturing the hearts and minds of the population of the Imperium. And then the ripples through the Imperium. How quickly did it spread? This gives a nice map here of the speed with which the information was disseminated. Of course, the military and the people in power got the information long before the public, but it's still pretty interesting. I played a game where my players were in the Spinward Marches when word arrived, and it didn't impact their daily lives much, but I thought it was a neat backdrop for the campaign. And then we go to what Dalinar had planned, the Imperial family itself. Again, this is pretty much the best look we had at them before they were killed, until Mongoose's Third Imperium book came out a month or two ago, and even then we only got a couple of paragraphs on each one of them. I would like to have known a lot more about these folks before they just became a footnote to history. Love the artwork. Love the artwork. And then talking about the early days of the rebellion, how things are kind of grinding down. Lucan is calling in all these frontier fleets to help consolidate his power, but he's leaving the Empire bare and open to other aggressors. And then we go into the nature of the rebellion itself and what their aims were. And this was the idea you could kind of dive into with the rebellion. It was far too big for player characters to really have much of an impact, in my opinion, unless you were playing at the highest level of Imperial command and control. But it did give a nice look at the backdrop of what the rebellion would be for your day in, day out traveler. And I really think that's more what they had intended when they did this. The idea was that it would give you a more stimulating environment. It wouldn't be as static and as, quote, safe, unquote, as the Imperium during its golden age. I tried it. I did play a rebellion campaign. I played a couple, actually. I ran a couple in the late 80s, early 90s. It was too big for me. It landed. It didn't land. It kind of overwhelmed the players, and I felt it made the players feel kind of small. At least that's how our group was experiencing it. I ended up going back to just the Golden Age before the assassination. Okay, and then we go to various campaigns that are had and the nature of the rebellion itself, and then we go into the fleets. Now, this book really comes into its own here because this is the first time I ever saw in one place all this info on the Imperial fleets. And I took a lot of this information and I just took it back to before the assassination and applied it to my Traveller campaign. And it is very applicable. All you have to do is ignore that the fleets were moved. And so there's the Imperial Navy command channels all the way down through the ships themselves, the Imperial Navy fleets and squadrons, the Aslan Naval Organization. These are just, it's really good information. The depots of the Imperium. I had, of course, read about depots here and there in library data and things like that, but I'd never really experienced an Imperial Naval depot until I got this book. So again, this is information that you can easily just bring back to your Traveller campaign, whether you use the assassination or not. It's information that just ports beautifully to other times in Traveller. Armies of the Imperium. Never really thought about the armies, to tell you the truth. Everything for me was, kind of Star Trek-ish, naval focused. And here we have talk of the armies. And of course, there's always been armies in Traveller. It was just something I never paid much attention to. It goes into how the armies reacted during the rebellion. Again, this is information that can be used any time. And then the various agencies. Who is doing what when. What projects might have been going on. How the Vargir reacted. How the different intelligence agencies responded to the community. And this goes into more of that too. Now, some of the intelligence agencies had been brought out in various products in Classic Traveller, but again, this is information that can be used anytime in Traveller. And now we come to the factions of the rebellion. This is really what I wanted the book for. I wanted to get a good look at everybody who's in there. And they list the factions as Lucan, who is technically the emperor, Margaret, Strefan's cousin, Dalinar, the assassin, Antares, the Berzik, the Archduke of Antares. He says, hey, I could be emperor. Just because I'm Vargir doesn't mean I can't be emperor. Daibei has its own claim to the throne. They think that they would be the best follow-on. Vland, the Villani, say the heck with this. We're just going to reestablish our old empire. The Zero Circa. Strefan, wait a minute. Strefan, he's dead. No, wait. No, that wasn't Strefan, according to this guy. That was a body double, a duplicate. I'm fine, and I'm coming to reclaim my throne. Is it true or not? That was a mystery that hung over us for years. I'll reveal that as I do further books into the rebellion. Of course, Varian was one of the people, but Varian is not with us anymore, having been killed in the firefight either by Lucan or by the assassin, depending on who you believe. Norris, the Archduke of Deneb. He's on the other side of the claw. He's kind of riding out the rebellion, not committing either way. And then we go to the Aslan. The Aslan Ihate are looking for territory. So in they go. The Vargir, always ready to pillage. A bunch of pirate fleets come in. The Zodani, of course, the evil empire, to just outside the Spinward Marches. How are they reacting? And then, of course, the Salamani want to avenge the capture of Terra about a century before. So there we go. So then we come down to friends and enemies, who likes who in the factions, the consequences of the rebellion, which mostly is disrupted trade. And then we come and we look at a nice profile of each of the rebelling factions. Lucan, Dalinar, Margaret, Varian, Strefan, Vland. Now, Varian himself is not doing it, but there is a group that's following his ideology that's calling out for somebody of Varian to take up the mantle that Varian would have carried had he lived. Strefan, whether he's false or not, he does have following. And then we come into Vland, of course, recreating the Zero Circa. The various Villani megacorps, how they react. Antares, the Archduke of Antares feels he has a legitimate claim to the throne, but he also feels that because he's not a human, he'll never be able to sit the throne. Norris is my guy. I like Norris. Short, pudgy, but he knew what he was doing. I, for some reason, identify with Norris. I don't know why. I like Norris. I like how he was handled throughout this. The Aslan, of course, the Ihate fleets coming up, wanting land. The Vargir being raiders and plunderers. Daibei. The Zodani. So this is just a larger look at the pages that have gone before. And Salamani. And then historical notes on the rebellion. So these are where the major clashes are by year, and what the sphere of influence of everybody is year by year, up through 1119 to 1120. And then we get a look at equipment catalog for the rebellion. The Imperial Rampart class fighter, we saw that before in Fighting Ships of the Shattered Imperium. A nice looking battle cruiser of Vargir class, Foghawks class heavy cruiser, and then a common Imperial transport, and then why not just a sector map, blank, waiting for you to write your stuff in. And then we come to the back of the book. I really enjoyed this book, 80 pages, well worth acquiring in my opinion. This is available on DriveThruRPG. It's also available on the Mark Miller Far Future Enterprises webpage. Even if you're not playing Rebellion, even if you hated Rebellion, which by the way, I did not hate Rebellion. Hate's a strong word. I don't apply it to games usually. I was a little unhappy with Rebellion, as I've discussed before in my videos. That was during a time in the 80s and 90s where the idea was you tear down what had gone before and craft everything new. This was just another casualty to that. I still kind of am sad they went this way. But this book itself has tremendous information for any time in Traveller about the depots, the fleets, anything. Even the factions. If you don't do the assassination and you go forward into the Laurenverse with GURPS Traveller, where the assassination never happened, this book still gives you a great idea of the political landscape that's going on at that time, whether the assassination happens or not. So I recommend this book highly. I think it's a very worthy addition to anybody's library. As I've said, I've literally read the cover off of this thing, which is just a shame. Oh, it's completely free now. Yep, these glue bindings just don't hold. But it's still very worth having in your Traveller library. I recommend it highly. So that's all I've got to say today. On page 121, thanks for tuning in. If you like what you heard and saw, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.